Welcome to Made in Spain, the show that takes you past the postcards.
We're two friends who live here, absolutely love it, and can't stop pulling at the threads of what makes this country tick.
I'm Nalini.
And I'm Laura.
And every week we go past the flamenco cliches and the tourist maps and the tourist traps.
Into the food, the design, the designers, and the festivals and the people who make this place absolutely unforgettable.
One story, one flavor.
One episode at a time.
So pour yourself something good and
come along for the ride.
Yay. All right. Laura, before we get into, well, we should just say today we're doing the podcast, but we're also talking about the business of podcasting.
Yes.
Because we went to the podcast show in London. Mm-hmm. So we'll get to that in a second. But first we have an email. This is Sarah from Tenerife. She says that, well, I mean, I think to get an email like this is really, really nice because it shows you that we are connecting with people and that we are trying to build a community. And this is from Sarah. She says, "My name is Sarah and I recently discovered your podcast. I've listened to every episode from number 1 and just finished the latest. I'm obsessed. I'm an expat myself. I'm Japanese and lived in Tenerife for almost 10 years. When you talked about Carnival in Trinidad, it made me want to go too. And I think Laura mentioned Tenerife's Carnival. If you ever visit the Canary Islands, it would be amazing to experience the carnival. Just wanted to say hello." Yeah.
Awesome. Sarah, thank you so much for reaching out to us with this. We promise you we will make it to the Tenerife Carnival.
Can I ask you a question? Is it Tenerife or Tenerife?
In Spanish, it's Tenerife,
okay,
but in English, it's Tenerife.
Okay.
So, and one thing I'm going to break to Nalini just to get a reaction from her.
Oh, no.
Yesterday, I was in the car listening to soca music. I'm like, maybe I'll bring up Nalini tomorrow. Do you want to go back to the Trinidad Carnival next year?
This is a shout out to my sister that I'm going to tell her right now. She already said no.
Please, let's do it.
She said for 2027, no. We will revisit for 2028.
Okay, please.
Yeah. So 2028, here we come.
I'm already onboarding my husband into this. It's like,
it's 2028. 2028. So
Trinidad Carnival, here we come.
And I mean, really, the year goes by really fast. So by the time, this time next year, we'll already be deep in carnival preparation. Okay. Yeah, that's for my sister. All right. So let's talk about the history of podcasting.
Or as you would say in Spanish, poscat.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, sure we can.
So why is it difficult? Just like I couldn't say radio, because the phonetically, that last sound of that small town does not exist in the English language. So flip now to podcast.
I think it's because in Spanish, we don't have any words that have a D and a C following it.
That's true.
Most Spanish people, when they say podcast, they say poscat. And at first I thought it was a joke because I heard like my mom and some of my family members, the poscat. And then I was in a shop somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I was buying some nice dresses that I've actually worn on some of our episodes. And the lady said, "Oh, you have a poscat." And I'm like, okay. So
it's a thing.
It's a thing. Yeah. Anyway. So Spanish people have a hard time saying the word podcast.
But respectfully, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Just different languages have different phonetic combinations. It's just how it is.
Exactly.
All right. So history of podcasting. It is a phrase that was coined by a journalist, Ben Hammersley, in The Guardian in 2004. Basically, it's a mashup of iPod and broadcast. And somehow the name podcast stuck.
Yeah. Which is really funny if you think about it, because obviously podcasts are listened to in many devices that aren't Apple, and, Spotify and all the different platforms and YouTube and blah, blah, blah. But they're all called podcasts. And, you are referring to something that is an Apple product, which is the iPod.
Which people don't even use anymore.
Oh, no. Like your iPhone's basically turned into your iPhone or your phone.
But when we looked, I think it was maybe after the podcast show, I think we were sitting at the airport or I don't know, something. And one of us must have said, why is it even called podcast? Like, what does that come from? And then we, looked into it. And I said maybe it's because it's your iPod or something, or your ear pod. And that's where they coined the phrase. So along those lines, but you think it's just something you take for granted. You call it a podcast.
Yes. I love etymology of words.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fascinating because we say words all day, every day, and you don't think, where does this word come from? So this is a fairly new one.
So, and then the word hit the Oxford English Dictionary in 2005. Apple folded podcasts into iTunes the same year. And yeah, I think that's when it slowly started to kind of take off. Yeah, I think it's just a really interesting space to be in. And I don't know, like, could you go a day without listening to a podcast?
It's interesting because I have to say that before I still listen to music,
right.
But many times now I find comfort in listening to a podcast that I know or finding a new one. So sometimes when I just want to chill out or paint or do some artsy thing, I find it a lot easier to have a podcast in the background because I feel like I have company.
Yeah, you know what I think it is too? I think it's that human connection.
Yeah.
That we used to get from radio. But the difference with radio is that you cannot program it. You just kind of sit there and wonder what's coming up next, especially if it's talk radio, for example. But if you, I have to tell you a funny story in a second. If with a podcast, you program what is of interest to you. So sorry, this is just a funny, completely different tangent. But when Airty was really little and as a baby, he'd be in the car seat, I listened to a radio station in Toronto called 1010. So it was talk radio. And they always had their phone number on, they'd always say, I can't even remember what the number was, but 1010. And we went somewhere, and this is, now he's a teenager, but he was really little at the time. And because I had it on all the time. I always wanted I was home with him and, I wanted this like information all day. He thought his phone number was the radio station's phone number. So somebody asked him, what's your phone number? And he gave
the radio station's phone number.
Talk radio, 1010 in Toronto. And I'm like, oh my goodness, please don't write that down. That's the radio station I listen to all day when I'm driving around the car. But it just shows you how the industry has shifted. Nobody listens to radio anymore. I'm saying that, but for the most part, that is not the medium people flock to for information.
No, especially because you can't, like you said. Okay, so a lot of people still listen to the radio here, but I find it overwhelmingly political. Right. And I am not a politically oriented person. Right. It actually stresses me out. So when I put the radio on, it's like politics, so I kind of like, that is not a topic that interests me. So I think you can pick the topic that interests you in a podcast. Where on the radio, there may be some programs, but it's a lot harder. It's at this specific time of the day or, it's just very different.
What do you think? I see all the upsides. Obviously, we're doing a podcast, but all the upsides of listening to a podcast, having a podcast. What do you think the downside of this type of content is?
I think if people don't get into it for the right reasons. So I think that if you start a podcast, for example, if you're in the podcasting world and you're trying to build something just to make money or, something that is not truly dear and near to your heart, I feel like it could be almost like people who get into content creation and they don't pick an area where they really love it.
Right.
I think it could be demoralizing. You have to have the hosts and the people who are behind the mics need to love what they're doing. And I think it really shows.
I think so too. And I thought one of the things that I can see, one of the downsides is that if you have a political belief or any kind of belief, religious belief, political belief, a certain set of morals, you can go on to wherever you listen to your podcast, that's a famous phrase, and find content that supports your belief.
And the algorithm would even feed that more. So even if you're not searching for it, you know, if you search for us, then all of a sudden you're going to be, you know, looking for a lot of
tickets.
A lot of like Spain related content. If you listen to Joe Rogan, you know, you're going to get things that are very similar to what he talks about. So it may feed your bias.
Yeah.
So maybe that's one thing to think about is when you are picking or listening, maybe venture out sometimes, you know, to things that are not your natural box. That
exactly,
you know, grow out of your box.
I think so. Yeah, I was thinking about that this week. You know, just preparing for the show, and I thought, gee, I wonder what a downside would be. And it's just that the ability, it allows you to double down on whatever belief that you have, and maybe not explore the other side of it.
Exactly. It's just like your Netflix algorithm.
Yeah, which, by the way, right now is off campus.
Yeah.
Save that for another time. Okay. So do you want to go through the list of some of the most profitable podcasts and their value? I can categorically say it is not ours.
Yes, correct.
But it's not ours yet.
Let's talk about the actual business of podcasting. So the money.
Yes.
Globally, the podcast market is worth nearly $40 billion.
Right.
So 2025, up from 31 billion in 2024. In the US, podcast advertising alone has skyrocketed to $4 billion. We're talking big numbers here.
Yeah. And that is, I mean, even when I was kind of doing the research, it is an astronomical amount of money for content creation that is I feel almost as if it's the Wild West.
It may be the Wild West, but at the same time, I totally see why it is worth investing in podcast advertising. And I'm not giving ourselves a plug here. Okay, I can remember the couple of podcasts that I listen to all the time. For example, Heart Starts Pounding. You know, they always talk about Quinn's clothing, but I can tell you all the sponsors on there because I am a captive audience. You know, I'm sitting there listening, and sometimes I'm not going to skip through those ads. So I listen to the ads multiple times, and I end up recognizing the brands. And I also think, oh, cool, these people are sponsoring something that I like. Yeah. You know, it's not like when you're watching TV and it's very generic. So I think that there's a lot of power in podcast advertising.
And I think, well, in my case, if there's something wellness related, it does kind of pique my interest. And I think, oh, this is interesting. I should look this up. So it does. It works because also when you have created in your mind this relationship with this type of content, not necessarily with the host, but with the content, that's your, I mean, the podcast that I really like, Dish, I love on a Wednesday that I know I get to listen to it. So I listen to it even if I'm doing stuff in the house or I'm cooking, or I'll save it. That's the other thing. It's like a treat.
It is.
To have that half hour uninterrupted where I'm stepping into this other world, and I get to pretend that I'm friends too with that actor or singer, or sometimes I don't even know who they are, but they're just a really interesting person. I think that's where podcasts really help that individual connect.
Yes.
You know? So, okay, we're talking about money, which again, this is a business. We do it because we love it. We're trying to slowly turn it into, you know, a very successful, lucrative business.
Yes.
But we're not at the Joe Rogan level. Nobody is, let's be honest. So, some of the most profitable podcasts and their value. You want to read that out?
Joe Rogan went exclusive to Spotify in 2020 for a reported $200 million plus. And then you have 2024 non-exclusive deals worth up to $250 million that then put him back on Apple, Amazon Music, and YouTube. Alex Cooper from Call Her Daddy.
Yes.
SiriusXM reported $125 million. Crime Junkie, that's the space I would be in, reportedly turned $45 million in profit in 2024. That's from Bloomberg. And other big headline names, Patrick Bet-David, $350 million. Logan Paul, $155 million. New Heights, $149 million. And Stephen Bartlett, who I have to say out of this whole list is the only person I actually listen to sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Diary of a CEO. I listen to that quite a bit. 90 million. And I know there's controversy around that because a lot of people don't like him, think he's a little bit sexist.
Listen, the only thing, I don't listen to his podcast. I will listen to, if it's an interview-based podcast, if I like the guest being interviewed. So I do listen to Joe Rogan, but I will listen to him if I like the guest. And often when you get that really long format where it's an hour or 2 hours long, you really get to know that person, whether it's a celebrity or a politician. Like, for example, the leader of the opposition party in Canada, Pierre Poilievre, he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and I had a whole new respect for him. It doesn't mean
you're going to agree with him.
I'm going to agree or disagree or whatever my political belief is, but I had a whole new respect for him because I really got to kind of know him in that format. Whether it's a show or not, I don't know, but it could be him, it could be somebody else. It just gives you that deep dive. So for me, it's guest dependent, but I will say with Stephen Bartlett, I think he should know more than he pretends to know.
He knows more than he pretends to. He's like, okay, we got it. Like at the beginning, you were asking these questions like, oh, but now it's like, just be real. Like, you know more than most of the people that you're interviewing.
Well, yeah. And I think, he'll ask a question like, so if I take melatonin before bed, I'll fall asleep. I'm like,
no,
what?
Really? Really?
Like, are you actually asking this question for real? Like, how do you not know the answer to this question?
What is the name of that gentleman? Bill
Maher?
Maher.
Yeah, Bill Maher.
My God.
I'm saying it phonetically. I don't know why, but Bill Maher.
So I tried to watch that episode in the Joe Rogan podcast.
Oh, I didn't.
10 minutes. I had to turn it off. It's like,
why? He was offensive. I don't know I don't really follow him.
It's very sexist. Very sexist. And it's for me, it's like, again, I understand Joe Rogan and I have respect for him for this. Interviews people that he agrees with, he disagrees with, all of that. I have a lot of respect for that. But 2 hours of having to listen to things that I find put women down.
Offensive.
You just couldn't do it.
No, I agree. But we've also mentioned a lot of male-led podcasts.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference for female-led podcasts?
Yeah. The Heart Starts Pounding. Kaylin
female?
Moore. She is fantastic. I think she just does a great job. And I feel like she's my friend.
Yeah.
That is delusional. Okay. Kaylin, sorry. But but I do. She just, she gave birth to her firstborn like a few months ago. And I've been listening to that podcast for a couple of years. So now her sponsors are like baby milk and things. So I do find that, she's done fantastic. And she's one of the other things I really admire about Heart Starts Pounding is that it's one person. Like she's doing it. Like she doesn't interview people like us in many ways.
Right.
She doesn't bring people on the podcast. So it's a lot of research and, her kind of putting the grit in.
I will just say a quick shout out to Danica Patrick because I really, for a while, I really followed. She was a former
NASCAR driver.
Yeah. And then she was an F1 commentator, and that she was, I don't want to say fired, but maybe let go of being an F1 commentator. I don't know why. Some cited her political beliefs. I'm not sure. Really? I really like her, and I really liked her podcast because she was very curious about just about a variety of different things. I thought, that was really interesting. So I think it's a space that still is quite male dominated. So you have to get the female voices out there that I would hope is not just, I don't know, in the wellness space or fashion or whatever is typically considered to be female.
Yes, I 100% agree.
Okay, now, do you think that I found this really interesting that the podcast space that's growing is a space where you have betting in Southeast Asia on cricket?
No idea.
Yes. Yeah. That's apparently, a growing area of content creation, that if you have a podcast that talks about the cricket teams, betting sites will sponsor those podcasts.
Interesting.
So think about the population of Southeast Asia. Think about how many people actually watch cricket. I don't watch it. I don't follow it. But I mean, if you looked at it.
I do not. So sorry. A game that can go on for 5 days and you don't have one side winning.
No, but I don't understand cricket, but when you look at it, it's a very ignorant thing to say on my part, and I don't follow it.
I know mine.
However, you look at the population of the world and the percentage that follows cricket, I'm going to say,
big.
Probably a lot more than the NFL.
Yeah. 100%.
You know, so it's just, I think it's interesting that that's a space that's growing. Now you have podcast listening 1 hour plus per week. South Africa tops the list at 68%.
What is going on in South Africa?
I don't know. Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Thailand. US doesn't come in until like 39%. And then you have, Canada, for example, at 31% and Japan at 10%.
And Spain, shout out, 41% over
Spain,
the US.
41. So I don't know. I thought it was really interesting that because sometimes when we get our stats in, it is interesting that our listenership
have been top 10 in Travel and Places podcasts out of these countries, in Indonesia, in Spain, in Japan, and in, I believe, Saudi Arabia.
I think so too. Yeah, I remember you mentioning that to me. So you look at that and then you look at the actual consumption and how long they listen to it. That kind of makes sense now. Yes. Don't you think?
It does.
So do you want to talk about the podcast show in London?
So podcast show in London, very well organized event. It was in the Business Design Center in Islington or Islington?
The Canadian way of saying it would be Islington.
Okay.
It's probably wrong, but that's how a Canadian would say it, Islington.
So there. Yeah. So what was really funny in this Business Design Center is that they have a lot of shops that are like for home decoration. And Nalini and I were getting so pulled into like, oh my God, look at this, like, kitchen decoration. Look at this, look at that. And that had nothing to do with the actual podcast show.
Location.
So some numbers, this was the 5th edition. It was 10,000 plus attendees. And
wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. 53 countries, 450 speakers. Some better than others, I will say. But networking is definitely the top reason that people go. To put that in perspective, I think Nalini and I, within a 2-day period, had 20 meetings.
We did. We talked and talked and talked. And it's also just little kind of, I would call them what you could say for organizing your work. Pomodoro.
Yes. The Pomodoro technique.
Yeah, these tiny little bites.
Yes.
Little tiny little things. So it's 10 minutes, you get 10 minutes. And for the most part, they stick to it. It's not like it ends up being 40 minutes or even 20 minutes. It's like the 10 minutes and you thank them very much. Thank you so much for your time. And they have to move on as well.
So I think we should shout out a few of the people that we met that, did a lovely job of how they came across. We had AVC, Kayari. She was lovely. And we also had Jam X as well. Mercury podcast, that again, very interesting network. And we had Global Studios as well as...
We had Bloomberg. We talked about a couple BBC pitches.
Yes, and we had a lot of different media companies that we were able to connect with there. Eurowaves and, Julian and Andrea. There are so many great people that we met. And I think one thing that I would take away from all of that is, on reflection, if you're going to any event that is this kind of like networking, etc., you have to almost prep for it in the sense that you need your energy.
You need your energy. And I mean, all transparency here. When we started, the first minutes in there and, you start talking to people, Laura and I mean, I'm speaking for you, but this is the truth. We didn't know what they were talking about.
Nope.
On the technical side of it, they're throwing out all these words and phrases and we're just like, yeah.
Actually, I think the single funniest moment for me was when someone asked, where are you hosting your show? And I turned around and said, our house. Which turned out that they meant like hosting online, like the platform, like Buzzsprout or Captivate or Megaphone or whatever it is. But literally I stood there and said our house because, again, I didn't know what they were talking about. And I thought they meant hosting as in filming the actual podcast.
I mean, they were very kind.
I don't
that's
remember.
not
what we meant.
Yeah, I think it was a woman who asked us the question. Where are you hosting it? And Laura said, at our house. And I was like, I don't think that's a question.
I don't think that's the question.
Not that I know more than Laura does. I can guarantee you that. But it is just the aspect of, I'm really proud of us that we put ourselves out there. We did not know what we were going to do, get out of it, anything. We just said, you know what, let's give it a go. I mean, I will say.
I have to recognize Nalini, though. I have to take a moment to recognize my co-host here, because there was a few things that really kind of came out for me that were, first of all, she's the one that had the idea of going to something like this, because we are, where we live and what we do, we're in a bit of a bubble, and, we speak with each other, we speak with our families, with our friends, with work-related stuff as well that has nothing to do with podcasts. So she said, I think we need to go to like a professional event. Talk to people who are in the business. So I'm like, okay. We looked at the US, we looked at the UK. I think both of us are very drawn to the UK for a number of reasons. The podcast we listen to and the banter, a lot of different things. So I think that, thank you for recommending that. And the other thing that came out as well that I thought was really good is we really, before this podcast or anything else, we're friends. And our friendship is what makes this podcast special. Yeah. And I think, that was a really big lesson learned for me from that.
Yeah. Can you tell them of me chasing Piers Morgan?
Oh, yes, please.
In my high heel shoes.
The most embarrassing moment was me saying that we host the podcast in our house. The highlight of the podcast show was Piers Morgan, who, by the way, huge respect for Piers.
Listen, people messaged me after, they're like, why would you take a picture with him? And I said, because I wanted to. What? Like, I like
Piers Morgan. I may not agree with everything he says.
But I can respect his contribution to discussion.
Society in this polarized world that we live in, sometimes you don't have to agree with the people that you follow or that you like. So again, Nalini said, I want to take a picture with Piers Morgan. I'm like, it's going to be impossible. There's 10,000 people here. Everybody wants to get near him. He was one of the key speakers of the whole conference. The key speaker, the most recognizable, at least. So because of her broadcasting background and the fact that I don't think she gives up, she said, no, I'm getting a picture with him. She went over to the security gentleman and said, like, have you seen Piers Morgan walking through this door? And he's like, who? What? Anyway, she ran after Piers Morgan in her stiletto heels through a cobblestone path.
Valentino's, by the way.
I was very surprised she didn't fly and then managed to get a picture with Piers Morgan.
Well, thank God, because your husband was running behind me.
Yeah. He's like, come on. And you may wonder, where were you, Laura? I was sitting there with all our handbags that I wasn't going to leave unattended. So
I ran him chasing Mr. Morgan, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Morgan. And he finally turned and I said, do you mind if I have a picture? And he said, yeah, of course. And he was super nice. I mean, listen, you can like him or hate him. I don't really care. But I just think that you go to a big show like that and you want to see or meet the big ticket on the the entire conference. And your husband, because we were doing a meeting, Jeff was able to listen to his talk, and he said it was
fantastic.
It was a really, really informative talk. Yep. So I think that's a good lesson. You may not like the political views of the person there. However, when they're giving a business talk and they are successful, you can take something out of that.
100%. I could not agree more.
Yeah.
So with that, people, we're on to our slice of life. Yay. Slice of life.
Slice of life. So in honor of the podcast show in London, where we are having this is biscuits, roses de Reims, which is French, but it's from Fortnum and Mason, established in 1707. This is this. And you apparently have to have it with champagne. So we're having the Spanish version, cava. I know. Right. So
can I ask you a really silly question? Yeah. Are these glasses intentionally shaped like boobs?
Yes. Okay. If you drink champagne, anything sparkling, bubbly, these are technically the wrong glasses to drink in. But if you're going to have these biscuits, you kind of need a glass like this. Okay, so Here, help
Isn't this
yourself.
the glass that Marie Antoinette used to drink champagne out of?
Well, it was shaped, these champagne glasses were based on the shape of her breast.
Okay.
So you should be drinking it in a flute. Not that I'm an expert, please, but in a flute because it keeps the carbonation. So this allows the carbonation to escape faster. The flute allows it to stay longer and give you the bubbles. Do you like the biscuit?
I do, and I just got sugar all over my iPad.
Oh,
that's okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna say these are not my favorite. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try it, but it's not my favorite. Okay.
Come on, they're good.
No, this time I like it, but I think because I like the cava more.
Yeah.
Whatever we had last time.
Moet.
Okay, never a sponsor now.
Bye, Moet. No, don't get me wrong, it was good, but it was a little bit more acidic.
And I didn't like it. This I can get behind. Mm-hmm. This I'm good. Liking. Okay. All right, I'm going to finish the biscuit while you...
Okay. So for our slice of life today, we wanted to talk about one of the people who has inspired us to keep growing in the podcast industry, and that is Angelica Robles. Angelica and I met quite a few years ago, and it's very interesting. When I first met her, I had no idea about her background. I actually met her because she was doing some work with a foundation called COCI, C-O-C-I.
Okay.
And it was a philanthropic effort. And I found her to be very approachable, etc., but really no idea about her background. I knew that she was a very strong, resilient woman. I know that she's done the swim to Alcatraz. She's done yes. Yeah. You know, the Iron Man, like the Iron Woman, I guess, or I don't know.
Really?
Yeah. She's,
my goodness.
in very cold water.
Shout out Angelica.
Yeah. She is like a tough cookie.
Wow.
So
as I eat my biscuit.
Yes, exactly. So after a while, she's gone through a lot of different things, but now she's building basically a media empire. She has a podcast. She has her book, Through These Brown Eyes, that, again, fully recommend the book. I really suggest to read it, especially if you want to understand how important it is to be resilient. And at the end of the day, it's, yes, your context, what happens to you in your life, it could break you or make you. And in this case, I think with Angelica, it has really kind of, turned her into this powerhouse of a woman that, she does things on her terms. And I really respect that. So some of the things that she suggested to Nalini and I was really around the hustle. Like, look, you gotta hustle, you gotta reach out to people, you gotta keep growing. Because if we want to grow this project for all of you who, listen to us and want to come along on this journey as the Made in Spain community grows, we have to continue growing that. And that takes some grit and it takes some resilience.
It takes grit, resilience, and also just a belief in what you're doing, that at the end of it, yes, listen, it would be fantastic if Apple or Spotify or Acast came in and said, hey, here's a car full of money and we want to bring you guys on board. Obviously, if that was offered to pretty much any podcast, they would take it. But the initial impetus for doing this was because we really
wanted to.
We wanted to, and we like spending time with each other. And I think it's really important that when you're doing any kind of project, yes, obviously there's a monetary attachment to it. Either you can afford to do it or you can't, and you want to make money. But there has to be a love of it, first of all.
Yes.
And I think it's really fascinating that, people will say things about us online that, they assume that we're foreign or we're this or that. And why are you talking about this? But it's because we experience it and we want to experience it. And I think if we didn't have this podcast, I think we would have just gone from our homes to the beach, to a restaurant, back home. And that would have been our day to day. This vehicle has given us a whole world of opportunity to explore.
If you're passionate about a topic and there's something you love, and maybe you have a friend that you can bring along, do it. Like, don't think about it too much because it can take you in all kinds of unexpected directions. So I'm going to say kind of a headline about Angelica, just to kind of close this part out. Published international best-selling author, former forensic investigator and interrogator turned speaker. And the memoir is really about resilience. So I don't want to give too much more away because we are going to interview her eventually on the podcast. But I really do recommend for, any woman that is struggling through anything, find those people that can be that inspiration and motivation, whoever they are, because it can really help you to see there are options, there are choices that you can make. And, if you are passionate about something, you can build it into something for sure.
And I think what people don't see about us specifically is that people think, oh, we have this team. And I mean, I think that was a really eye-opening thing from the podcast show. People kept referring to, oh, your team and your manager.
Your team of no one except our wonderful producer, Carlos.
And I mean, sometimes we had to inflate it to make it sound as if we have this team of people helping us do everything, but that's not the reality. We come up with things ourselves. We execute our ideas ourselves. If we talk about something, it's because we've experienced it.
Yeah.
And I would hope that authenticity comes through.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are going to end with 2 fun facts about Spain.
Okay, this is completely random.
Random fun facts.
It is actually random. Did you know the mop was invented in Spain?
So Nalini called me yesterday before we were doing this episode and in the planning, and she said, did you know the mop was invented in Spain? I'm like, what?
Yeah.
No, I did not know it was invented in Spain.
So it is, Manuel Jalón Corominas.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah. Okay, close enough. Spanish engineer invented the mop. And until then, people had to kneel down to sort of clean the floor. Maybe there was a different way. But when we're talking about the mop, we're talking about the bucket that could actually
rinse.
Yeah, wring the water out, the one that we have with the pedal. So it happened in 1956. He was an engineer, and I think I don't know if he worked on a U.S. Army base, something to that effect. And saw how the men were cleaning the floor and thought, oh, there's got to be a better way. Came up with this idea, displayed this mop bucket situation. I think mop and bucket they're 2 very funny words together. Yeah. But anyway, in Zaragoza. Mm-hmm. And the price for it was at the time 356-ish pesetas.
I told Nalini when she told me this story.
That's a lot of money?
That's a lot of money, especially
in 1956.
It is. And I told you when I was 14, 13, I was getting 500 pesetas allowance for the whole week.
You're also not 100, so exactly. That would have been in the 2000s.
Yeah, it was many years ago, 1956. And again, 500 pesetas is a lot of money. 390 whatever pesetas or 56 pesetas at the time is a lot of money. I would have to look into exactly how much that would have gotten you. In my head, the easiest way to understand how far money goes is by the price of coffee, like a café con leche. But it was a lot of money. So it was a luxury item. It
was considered a luxury item. But he thought, okay, well, this is going to change the way particularly women have to do their housework. So the story goes, the first salesperson, he wanted to call it a fregasuelos. Mm-hmm. But the person who was selling the mop bucket combination called it a fregona.
Yeah. For a while, the fregona was kind of also a symbol of that's what quote unquote women do. Fregona is the woman of the house or whatever. But I think so it had almost I would say almost a little bit of a, you're supposed to stay in the house sort of vibe. I mean, in history, there have been times where people would buy their wives or their significant other, something like that for a present. Yes.
What, a mop and a bucket is?
Yeah. This used to be a very misogynistic country. Still is to some extent. I mean, let's be real. It is.
Everywhere. But I'm just saying, can you imagine getting a mop and a bucket for a present?
Yeah. It would end up I would put the bucket over my husband's, head if that was the case. But I think it is an amazing invention. Same thing as the dishwasher. I mean, it's like, come on, something that doesn't tie you up to having to do a horrible amount of work. So, and the other fun fact that we wanted to share with you is a brand that you may have not known was Spanish.
I actually thought it was Mexican.
Okay, so do you have these in Canada?
I don't know, but possibly. But I honestly thought, I actually had a verbal argument. I'm like, they have to be Mexican. And he's like, no, they're Spanish.
So I just love the name of the brand, Chupa Chups.
Yeah.
Chupa Chups.
No, he told me, yeah.
And the cool thing is that Salvador Dali, actually designed their logo. And it has been the same since 1969.
Wow.
So this Chupa Chups logo, which again, I got this at a gas station. Like every gas station, all these different places have it. I mean, how would you know that you're buying something that was designed by Salvador Dali?
You wouldn't.
No.
But you now know.
There you go.
We shared the information.
Fun facts.
So fun fact. So the next time you pick up the mop and you press it with the pedal, it's a Spanish invention.
And same thing with the Chupa Chups. So with that, we're getting to our saying of the day.
Okay.
Nalini, you ready?
I am ready.
Hablando se entiende la gente.
Oh my God. Okay. So, oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
Talking. We're talking.
By talking.
We say it again.
Hablando se entiende la gente.
By talking, we understand each other.
Boom!
Did I get it?
Yes, you did. Word by word.
I have to send my tutor these clips.
By talking, people understand each other. It's basically, why I think it's so wonderful with podcasts. By people expressing themselves, by people sharing their passions, what they know about, their research. We understand each other. So we can connect in a different way.
Yes.
So, hablando se entiende la gente.
Yeah. Good show.
Nice.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you very much for coming along with this journey that we're on. And we're looking forward to the next episode and can't wait for you to continue to be a part of the Made in Spain podcast community.
Yeah. Cuenca, here we come.
Bye for now.